Hello, everyone. What is today? Let me think about that. Today is May 27th, 2020. I hope everybody is doing well. Getting in here about a minute early. I have kind of a funny story to start out the Unfound Live Show for tonight. But first, I want to say hi to all of you who have got in here a little early. Robin from beautiful Atlantic Canada, Nova Scotia, eh? Kristen, Laura, Dan from Almost Heaven, West Virginia. I think I've been there. LaFord, how are you? And Christine, and Jasmine, and Angela, and Twinkle, Conscious Susan Ann. Great. And I'm sure we're going to have a nice showing. We had a really large audience last week. We'll see if we can copy that this week. I got a little allergy going on, so apologize my thing going. Tanya, Kathy, and Cherie. Yeah, I got a funny story to start out. Hello, Michelle. Tonight's live show. And if you're new to the live show and wondering what goes on here, well, it's I guess this is the place where Unfound can kind of let down its hair. And it's not quite as prim and proper as the episodes are. We talk about things regarding true crime, and then we may stray into some topics that are outside of true crime and missing persons cases. I will talk about some true crime stuff that's in the news. I will give you maybe some updates on some of Unfound's cases, if there are any. I really don't think we have any for tonight, unlike last week. And just kind of go over the episode from the previous week, kind of let everybody know what's going on. Most importantly, take questions from you, the audience. And then most importantly, we preview that coming Friday's episode. So it's a little bit of everything on the live show. And we've been doing this live show since about October of 2017. So about 2.5 years. And I do enjoy it. Maybe some of you who were in there right at the beginning, you remember it started on Tuesdays. And then I moved it to Wednesdays, which I think was a very good choice. So that's what we do here on the live show. Like I said, we do get into theorizing in some cases that Unfound isn't covering, because I do get asked about some disappearances. They're going on nationally. Like last week, we talked about Suzanne Morphew and Madison Bell's disappearances, and I will be following up on both of those tonight. So that's what we do here. It's, like I said, a little more laid back, get in your easy chair, in contrast to on Fridays, where it's all about information and news and trying to solve a disappearance. So it's very serious. Whereas on Wednesday nights, it's a lot more laid back. Astrid, hello, Heather. Vegas, goodness, Vegas girl, good to see you. Escape. The funny story that I have for you to start off this show is, over the past week or so, I've been getting up every morning and I've had a mosquito bite somewhere on my body. In fact, must have been about 4 or 5 days ago, I had a mosquito bite right here. And now I have one on my elbow. I don't know if you can, you can kind of see that in the camera, that little red spot. That's a mosquito bite. Every morning I've been waking up with one mosquito bite, but during the day while I am here, I never see any mosquitoes flying around. And, really when it comes to Florida, I know maybe people think about bugs, but unless a area is really, really bogged down with water and everything, I would not say that I run into a lot of mosquito problems here in Florida. And the other weird part is I don't leave my windows open. I'm an air conditioning guy. I love the Florida weather and everything, but when I'm inside, I'm inside. And I love it like it's when it's really hot out. I love to come inside and it feels like Antarctica in here. I love it to turn it way down. And when I sleep, I love the temperature to be way down, no matter, what's going on outside. I like to be cool or cold inside my place, to the point where I'm walking around in my bare feet and my feet maybe even get a little sore because the floor is so cold. It's just the way I am. So I'm wondering, how am I getting these mosquito bites and everything? And I'm under the covers at night and I don't leave any windows open or anything. Really puzzled. So about, I don't know, 8:30 tonight, so about 35 minutes ago, I'm just wondering what's going on. And many of you know my condo is a 2-bedroom, and I'm here in the guest bedroom, and there is a bed right here. I'm sitting right beside it. And there is a bathroom. You can see this white door. That door goes into the guest bathroom. And there's also, if you go out the door, like to the left here, there's also a door that goes into the bathroom that way. So if somebody is in here, they can shut this bedroom door and go directly into the bathroom without having to go out and around. And I rarely use this bathroom. Rarely. But I was in there about 8:30 tonight, and I flip on the light, and I finally see a mosquito flying around. I said, huh. And then I saw a second one flying around, and I saw a third one flying around. I was like, what is going on in here? So there is also a shower in this bathroom. My bathroom, the main bathroom, has a shower and a tub, and it actually has a sink with like 2 sinks. But over here, it's just 1 sink, toilet, and a shower. So I open up, and I never use the shower, ever. I open up the shower door, and there are at least 10 mosquitoes sitting either on the wall of the shower or on the roof of the shower, the ceiling of the shower. You know what? It felt like in Aliens, the second one, where Sigourney Weaver goes down there and she finds where all of the eggs are being bred by the queen alien. That's what it felt like to me. I was like, oh my gosh. Wow. So the first thing I did was I got out of the bathroom, shut the door so they couldn't escape, first of all. And then it took me like 5 minutes to find a fly swatter, and I did find one. I forget where I think I left it in the bathroom. And so I went back in here with this fly swatter and shut the bathroom door behind me. And it was just me and those mosquitoes for about 5 minutes. And to recall another movie, it was kind of like the first Ghostbusters movie where they're just learning their machines out and they go in there and they totally tear apart whatever that dining hall is or whatever it is in that hotel. But they finally do catch that ghost or whatever it was. That's what it was like in there. Me just swinging this fly swatter all around. But I think I got most of them, but it was pretty funny. It was pretty funny. I mean, I've never seen something like that inside a place. Now, I don't know. It must be that some mother mosquito got in here somehow and bred little mosquitoes. And this whole time they've been hanging out in this second bathroom, particularly in the shower. It was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. Never seen anything like it inside a building. I've seen many mosquitoes clustering out in, public. In fact, must have been, I don't know, back in October, I went to the local disc golf course here, Taylor, and there had just been a big rain. There was a lot of standing water. I got through about 4 or 5, 6 holes, and I had to get out of here. That's how bad the mosquitoes were. But never inside something like I saw there. It was crazy. So I was just, there's a couple pictures in there. I didn't knock them off the wall, but in swinging, they kind of went back and forth. And not to gross you all out, but I have a little cleaning up. And being that I did hit most of them, I have a little cleaning up to do in there after the show is over. But that's what I was doing right before we came on the air tonight in my Unfound shirt, had my hair all ready and everything. And I'm just in there like just going crazy. And I do it right-handed, even though athletically I'm left-handed. Who knew? But that's what I was doing. I was just like, I don't know. It's just like I said, it's a little hard for me to understand because I don't leave the windows or doors or anything open. So who knows? But there you go. What's everybody saying? Kristen, am I a beach mom or not? You live in the perfect area to be a beach mom. Kristen, I love living at the beach. I love the view and everything, but I really have to be careful of my skin. I have skin cancer that runs in my family. So I can't really just go out, and I don't have the time to do that anyway, but just can't go out to the beach. And I get a little worried about that. Although I was out there today, riding the bike that I got, but my days of hanging out at the beach in the sun for hours upon a time are long behind me. In fact, I would say that I haven't done anything like that since I lived in Las Vegas, in some of the apartment complexes that I had where there were pools where people would go hang out. And that's like 13 years ago or something. I go and play disc golf, of course, out in the sun. That can't be avoided. But for the most part, I try to avoid the sun unless I really have to be out there. But I love the weather. I love the temperature and all that. But so I may look like a beach bum, but I'm really not a beach bum. Astrid says, yeah, turn it down to 50 degrees. Yep, that's me, Astrid. No, I love summertime, Kelly, but I love the hot air outside, but I want it cold inside. Yeah, 68. Sure, like Cherie's saying, like always 68 in my house. That's the way I do it, Cherie. Vegas, perfect in cooler months, no humidity. Well, I've lived there, Astrid, and it doesn't get cooler, and it gets cold in Las Vegas. Vegas girl tell you. Gets down to 20 degrees there. It will snow. I'm in Canada. I hate winter. Please bring on the heat. Yeah, well, you're getting there, Shauna. Kelly says, I guess if she would have seen those mosquitoes, she would have burned the house down. Yeah, I can't burn the house down. I'm renting in a huge building. Don't want to do that, Kelly. Twinkle says I would have flipped out about the mosquitoes. Vegas girl saying it's 110 in Vegas. I know those days. Vegas is beautiful. Her butt stays in the house when it's that hot. I used to go out in that all the time. I used to work in that weather, Vegas outside. Couple jobs that I had. But it's great if you're hanging out at the pool and everything. It's great. Heather's laughing at me. Michelle's also laughing about my mosquito story. Twinkle says, conquer those mosquitoes, show them who's boss. I think I did for the most part. I have to get them. I just have to get them. And I don't think I got all of them, but I got most of them. But I did shut the bathroom door again. So I will be going in there after we're done to see if there are any left. Cherie saying it's 118 in Qatar with full military gear. Yeah, Cherie, I know your son's in the military. I can't imagine it. Rob said it was 80 in Western PA today. I know my dad's been telling me about that weather, Rob. My father lives near Butler, Pennsylvania. Twinkle says crime scene at Ed's shower. Oh, there was definitely some killing going on, Twinkle, for sure. I mean, for sure. A lot of killing going on. Kristen, New Zealand. That is spectacular. It's me from New Zealand. I love it. Welcome. I guess it would already be well into May 28th there. Thank you for joining us. It's me. Dan says, got mosquitoes and I have stink bugs. Yeah, I don't know which one of those I'd pick. Maybe the stink bugs, Dan. Yeah. Astrid says, dad has stage 4 skin cancer. I've not had any issues yet. Of course, I'll be 50 here in a couple months. But my sister Diane and my brother Mike, Brian, have both had skin, cut off. Brian going back almost 20 years. He had some things cut off, and then just recently had some more other things burned off. And then my biological mother, Suzanne, she had some skin cancer issues too. But myself and my brother, Michael, not had any issues yet. I had my entire body checked out last summer. There was nothing. Christine, thank you for the contributions on the super chat. Maybe we just need to get into that. And super chat, if you'd like to make sure that your picture or comment or question or something like that absolutely gets seen, and absolute guarantee that I will mention it or answer your question or whatever, that's the way to do it in the super chat. Christine is showing an excellent example of that right now. Thank you, Christine. I deeply appreciate it. And while we're at it, I need to talk about patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. In fact, I will be mentioning that a bit in a second, considering what went on Sunday evening. News. It's me from New Zealand is saying, listen to all the episodes. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. That's a lot of listening. It's me. That's a lot. That's many. I think that we now have about 2 weeks straight of content for Unfound yet. So how many hours that's how many hours there is now out there for Unfound. Rob says he's in Beaver Falls. Rob, been to Beaver Falls many times. My freshman roommate in college was from Monaca, and I went to college with a couple guys from Freedom and Conway, Pennsylvania. In fact, one of them I'm kind of still in contact with. They went to Freedom High School. So I know that Ohio Valley very, very well. And Rob, maybe you already know this, but I am from Leechburg, Pennsylvania. Thank you, Christine. So that's what's going on with me. Like I said, I was out on the beach today. I got a bike from a company called Mongoose. It's one of these fat tire bikes. So the tire is like really big. And so they can be ridden on the beach. And yesterday, when was it? On Monday, on Memorial Day, I put it together. And then yesterday I took it out for a first spin, and I was a little shaky to start out, to say the least. But I got a hang of it. So I rode it a couple miles yesterday on the beach, like a mile north and a mile back. And then today it was a little tougher go because the tide was in, so there wasn't as much room to ride. And the sand was kind of wet, so the pedaling was a lot tougher. So I didn't go as far today. My quads were just burning. But it's one of the new ways I'm going to be staying in shape and getting out. Of course, asking me about being a beach bum. I'm going to be out in the sun, I guess, doing that. But it's really just to get out there, get some good exercise. And I would the bike, I had to put it together. I got shipped to me, and I had to put at least part of it together. It looks like to be a very, very high quality Mongoose, a fat tire bike from Mongoose. And if you're looking into something like that, I would certainly recommend it. And I'm not going to say what the price was, but it was I think, very reasonable. In fact, when I told my dad about it, he has a bike. The bike that he has is like twice what I paid. So I thought I've got a pretty good deal on it. And I think it's pretty high quality. It has 7 gears. And I'm here to tell you, pedaling on that sand, it's a workout, but that's the kind of bike you need if you're going to do that. Rob says he delivered to Walmart in Monaca today. That is fantastic. So you know exactly where that is. My old roommate now, Rob from Monaca, is now a doctor of mathematics at IUP, Indiana University of Pennsylvania. That's where he is now. And Dan says you're close to Morgantown. Of course, every time I go to Pennsylvania or come back, I go right through Morgantown, Dan, on 79. So I know that area well. It is good exercise, Jill. Hello, Jill. My new mother, Jill. Jill, who doesn't like In-N-Out Burger, but I'm trying not to hold that against her, Jill. Rob, thank you for the super chat. Thank you for the contribution. I deeply appreciate it. Always good to hear from somebody from Western Pennsylvania or Northern West Virginia. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Thanks for everybody for joining us. We have a nice showing tonight. Let's move on to some other things. The poll. Of course, last Friday, we covered the disappearances of not Will Parks, Julie Weflen, Deborah Swanson, and Kathryn Gregory. And the poll that was in the discussion group, a majority of you believe that Will Parks is responsible for the disappearances of all three women. Some of it was, I gave you a lot of different choices there, but that was the most common one. Some of the choices didn't get picked at all, but that was the most common one, that Will had something to do with all three disappearances. Another choice was that some people picked was that he had something to do with Julie's only, had something to do with Julie and Deborah's only. So those were the most popular picks, but a majority of you picked that he had something to do with all three disappearances, which is interesting because in the think tank, and this is why, if you aren't a think tank member, and if you really want to, maybe hear a different side of the kind of analysis that we do in Unfound, I would urge you to become a member of the think tank by going to patreon.com and /Unfound Podcast and join it at least the $12 a month level to become part of the think tank, because so many times we kind of come to a different conclusion than what the listeners do in the group who take part in the polls that I post every week. Oftentimes that happens, and it happened again this week. Thank you for posting that, Sheree. Patreon.com /Unfound Podcast. We talked mostly about Will Parks, and I've not had a chance yet to talk to John again since the episode came out on Friday. We are due to talk tomorrow. I'm going to give him a call, and we'll talk about the episode and what things people have said since. I will tell him about the think tank, and I do that for every guest that is ever on Unfound, going back, maybe not to the beginning, but going quite a ways back. And I think we kind of decided in the think tank, just to be very general with it, that to connect Will Parks to any of these disappearances is thin. There's no reason to not suspect him, but it just seems like it's not just circumstantial, but even the circumstantial evidence is fairly thin. And I think we in the think tank kind of thought that too much based on the opinions of the neighbors of Will Parks, who seem to be afraid of him for, I don't know, not liking him, which isn't a very good reason to point the finger at somebody for causing a disappearance, probably a murder. And in fact, in my opinion, the strongest evidence for Will Parks being involved is not with Julie's, it's with Deborah's. So, we just came to a little bit of a different conclusion. Once again, that doesn't mean everybody agreed. And many times people in the think tank disagree with me, and that is fine. But this week, a large majority of the people in the think tank, and we had a huge showing at the think tank, like 19 people, which is a lot. Usually we have between like 9 and 11, 9 and 12. We had 19 people in the think tank on Sunday night, which is fantastic. Love it. just disagreed with what the people had to say in the discussion group as far as the poll. And we just thought it was a little thin. And so I'm going to be talking about that with John tomorrow. He's the one doing the work. I don't want to feel like I'm a know-it-all or telling him his business. He's the one that's been working on it for 10 years. But I am hoping that he takes some of my words to heart. He's the one that, of course, is going to continue to work on it. And I'm hoping that he will take some of not just mine, but our recommendations to try to tie some of these loose ends up. I'll be honest with you, in Julie's disappearance, me personally, I have every reason to believe that a coworker killed her. I think that makes a lot of sense. So we'll just leave it at that. Yes, let's talk about thumbs up. Thank you for that, Michelle. If you are watching this right now, and I see we have another nice showing tonight, please go to whatever on whatever device you're viewing this, whether it's on a Dell laptop or a MacBook or an iPad or your phone, and give this video a like. Give it the thumbs up. That's very important, because then when people do a search for true crime or missing persons or anything else that we're going to talk about tonight, then this video will come up, and that's how new people can find Unfound on YouTube, and hopefully we'll bring them, of course, to the podcast itself. So I want to see a lot of thumbs up before we're done here, and we got a ways to go. These live shows have been like, what, an hour and 45 minutes the last month or so, and we may go that long tonight. I got a lot on the agenda, a lot of good stuff to talk about. Yes, so please give this video that you're watching, this live show, the Unfound Live Show, the thumbs up. Cherie says, thin is a great description regarding Will being connected to these disappearances. Cherie, it's a word that I use often when we talk, I think, behind the scenes regarding a lot of the disappearances. I think, Cherie, if anybody would know that. And that's just the way I kind of feel. Just because it's thin doesn't mean it's not true. It's just the theories with Will being connected to these women kind of hanging, maybe not by a string, but only by a couple of strings. Very thin. Michelle says, regarding the poll in the group, I just couldn't say yes to all three. Michelle, I can understand that. Shri adds, once again, as everybody knows, Shri is one of the assistants, and she is the moderator for everything that we do live on Unfound. She's congratulating me. Great job on the blog this week. Just read it yesterday, and I thought you made a lot of good points. Well, thanks, Shri. The blog this week, once again, if you are a Patreon member, you got to read it, or it's there for you to read. Usually the blogs that I write there regarding the case for that week, the disappearance for that week, the episode for that week, there are usually around 3,000 words. This week, 5,400 words. And I think that makes a lot of sense, given that there were 3 different disappearances that we talked about, and also that we had a person on the program who's been working on this for 10 years and has devoted his spare time to it, because John still works. So I thought there was a lot to go over, and I thought that because he's doing what he was doing, there's a lot that all of you can learn from somebody like John. And so I felt that I needed to write a longer blog. It just kind of all came together, and I knew even before I started writing it, this is going to be a long one. So if you are a Patreon member, and all you have to do is contribute $2 a month to be able to read the blogs that I write every week. $2 a month, that's it. Now, if you wanted to get into the think tank, other things Unfound on the ground, which we're going to talk about here in a second, then you need to make a larger contribution than $2 a month. But if you'd like to get a free ebook, if you'd like to be able to read my writings on the cases, where I expand a lot more on theories regarding the disappearance for that week and just missing person theory in general, then you should think about contributing $2 a month just to get to read that. Not only do you get just the one that's coming out this week, but you get to go back the whole way to August of 2017 when I started writing them. So You got like 130 blog posts to read about unfound cases. Sounds like a pretty good deal to me. Cherie says every disappearance deserves someone working on it for 10 years. Don't we know it, Cherie? Thank you for the thumbs up, Twinkle. Unchained. Hello. I love the fancy lettering. Unchained. Well, that's kind of neat. Michelle says it is a possibility that Will committed all three, but I do agree that it is thin. Yeah. And once again, I'll be talking to John tomorrow. I'm going to give him a call sometime. Got some other things to do, but I will be giving him a call. So let's talk about this next. Unfound on the ground. If you are a Patreon member at the $12 a month level or above, which what I like to call the premium level, then you had an opportunity to take part in the newest creation, Unfound on the Ground, hosted by my assistant, Dr. Eric Grabowsky. A little bit different, a little bit like a class, a little bit more of like a round table in which he is the me, what I usually do, and where he's looking for people's opinions. And instead of it being like a forum like this, he will be he conducted that one and all the ones that will follow on Zoom. So people have an opportunity to talk and you get to hear their voices. And I was listening on Sunday night after the think tank, but I did not take part. I was merely listening. And it's interesting to, see your names and wonder what you sound like. And then I got to hear some of the listeners' voices on Sunday night, which was kind of cool. And Eric, I thought, did a great job. Like I said, it's a round table where Eric leads the discussion and calls on different people to voice their opinions on the topic for that week. And the previous topic this Sunday night was, how do you get more attention for missing persons cases, regarding methods. And so that's what they talked about. I think it went for about an hour and a half. And afterward, Eric and I talked about it. We discussed a few things, just my opinion on what I heard. And the next one, though, this is not going to be something that is weekly. This is probably going to be 2 times a month. So the next one's going to come in June sometime. And we're also talking about, are we going to leave it on Sundays? Or are we going to move it to some other day of the week? And if we leave it on Sundays, we may have to probably move it to later. It's just felt like on Sunday night that the think tank felt a little rushed. So if we leave it on Sunday evenings, it's probably going to be moved back to 8:30, but that decision has not been made yet. The other choice is to move it to another night of the week. My concern regarding all of it is the people that are eligible for the think tank are also eligible for Unfound on the Ground. So if the think tank generally goes an hour and 15 minutes, and then Unfound on the Ground goes for, let's say, at least another hour and 15 minutes, that's 2.5 hours in which we are expecting people to be engaged mentally. And I'm just wondering if that might be a little too much to ask at this point or at any point. So we are having that discussion right now because we do want people engaged, of course, in both, because in the think tank, we're talking about a specific case and we want people's theories and opinions because those things go right back to the guest when I talk to the guest again. Whereas on Unfound on the Ground, where it's like a classroom / a round table type of situation, also we want people thinking, but Eric's not talking about a specific case. He's talking about different elements of disappearances. Like I said, this first one was, how do we better market missing persons cases? How do we get more people to pay attention to them? And so that requires, some brain power from people who are listening. And we just want to make sure that everybody is totally mentally engaged for both the think tank and Unfound on the Ground. And we're just wondering, Is 2.5 hours in one evening too much to ask? We'll let you know, but if you should know this. Now, let me read some of these things. Hello, Kathy. Okay. To join the Facebook discussion group, thank you, Cherie. Facebook.com/groups/unfound. Kathy and Michelle talking back and forth, which is fine. Now, you may be saying, well, I'm not on Patreon and I can't afford that. And I want you to know that's perfectly fine. I'd really like to hear this roundtable, Unfound on the Ground. What's going on there? I would like to learn too. Well, we're going to give you an opportunity to do that. Now, the think tank, it's going to remain private because I want the people who express their opinions, and many of their names are just as you see them in real life. And so I'm a little concerned about that, especially when they start talking about suspects, etc. We're going to keep that private. The think tank will continue to be private. That's not going to change. But when Unfound on the Ground, premium Patreon people will, of course, get exclusive access to it when it happens live, whether it's Sunday or Monday or whatever day we leave it on or put it on, and that will always be the case. The difference between Unfound on the Ground and the think tank will be that the Unfound recording, the audio recording, it's just not video, it's just audio. It will eventually be made available to the public for free. However, that will not come out until a few days before the next Unfound on the Ground episode is about to come out. So once again, just as an example, we had this previous Sunday, May 24th. Let's say the next Unfound on the Ground happens on June 10th, and I don't even know what day of the week that is. But most likely, that audio content will be made free for everybody. Let's just say within a week, somewhere around June 3rd or June 4th or June 5th for everybody. And it will be made for free on YouTube, where you are right now, and on the website. We've talked about maybe making it its own podcast and everything. And really, I've told Natasha and Eric, I just don't want to get into that right now. I think that could be a little confusing to people. And I'm not going to put that as another podcast because that would just be then something more that I have to manage. And then we have to start looking at, everything else regarding that. And that would additional cost for hosting it. And Natasha offered to put it in her podcast account because, as I told you last week, she does her own podcast. I mentioned that last week, and I really don't want to go that direction either. So we're going to make it for free eventually on right before the next On the Ground episode comes out. But we haven't really, Eric has not picked a day when that's going to be, but his plan, which I agree with, is to do 2 of those a month. Maybe 3, depending on the length of the month, but at least 2. So for all of you people, once again, who aren't Patreon members, and that sounds like something, well, I would be interested in that, but $12 a month, you will eventually get access to it. You're just going to have to wait a little while. It's kind of like a movie that comes out in the theater and then it ends up on Netflix or on Disney Plus or on cable, something like that, where you get access to it later on for a reduced price, if not free. That's kind of how we're going to handle that. But the think tank itself will continue to be private and not be made available to the public for the reasons that I've already stated. Christine says she has to go. She has to take a phone call. Well, sometimes life gets in the way, Christine. That's fine. So we'll see you later. But that's Unfound on the Ground. I thought it went well. And I really appreciate Eric taking this on to do this. Now, he has maybe a little bit of advantage being that he is a college professor. So he is used to running classes and calling on people and making an outline for a class, something like that. And so he was the person that brought the idea to me. He has the resume to do something like that. And each of these Unfound on the Ground episodes are going to be about the nuts and bolts of disappearances. And like I said, the first one was about how can we make missing persons cases more popular? And I think he's already picked out the next topic. However, I did not type it in my outline, and off the top of my head, I can't tell you what it is, but it's going to be a couple weeks before it comes out anyway. So be looking for that. That'll be something else. It'll be a new part of the Unfound YouTube channel for free, but once again, at least a few weeks after it is available for those premium Patreon members. So if that's something where you'd like to offer your opinion, thoughts on whatever topic Eric is covering for that episode of Unfound on the Ground, you should become a Patreon member. Otherwise, you can simply just sit back and wait for the audio to come out for free and listen to what Eric and other people have to say. Heather says it's worth the $12 a month, in my opinion. Plus, you get other perks too. The books, of course, Heather, and maybe some shirts as well. There's certainly some other things that go along with becoming a Patreon member, especially if you get up into the $12 a month or $20 a month levels. We have a $2, $5, $12, and $20. Thank you, Robin. Thank you. If you'd like to follow on the website, yep, the Unfound website that is really kicking butt these days, theunfoundpodcast.com. Thank you again, Christine. Thank you for the contribution. So there you go. Unfound on the Ground. Already, Unfound does the think tank. We've been doing that since about the beginning of 2019, and it's one of a kind. And now Unfound is doing something else that is one of a kind in trying to bring listeners together to try to educate them, but them also offer their opinions on theories regarding missing persons cases. Once again, this is not Eric's program on the ground is not case-based. He may use disappearances as an example, but it is theory-based, theme-based every week, not case-based, where the think tank is case-based. The episodes are case-based. On the Ground is not. All right. Moving on. Madison Bell. We talked about her last week. This time last week, she was still missing. We now know that she ran away. She took off. The more I got to learn about it, and I have to admit that I had somebody in Ohio who was kind of my pipeline, you might say. This person knows a lot about missing persons cases in Ohio, and this person was very close to everything that was going on. And I talked a lot of it over with my assistants, although they don't know who this person is, and because this person wants their identity always to be secret. But sounded like Madison had a lot of things going on. And if I am to believe what was going on, if there was facts, I'm not saying she was abused or anything like that. I'm not saying that at all. I think what I'm saying here is that I think that she needed to kind of just move out and get away. And it just seems to me she didn't have the courage just to tell her family, her parents, her mother, you know what? I'm getting the heck out of here. That's what it seems like to me. Now, Cherie asked me if I was going to talk about this. She made this comment about all the searches and the cost, because there are people out there who are now complaining about it. What do I think about this? What are you going to do? Are you going to bill Madison Bell's family? That doesn't seem right. Should you bill Madison herself? Well, I guess what's going to be interesting to me, if she ran away, is she going to keep her same name? I don't, is she going to change her social security number? I have no idea. They'll probably be able to track her down if she doesn't. But should somebody pay, not the taxpayers, for when these kinds of things happen? I don't know. If this went on for months and she was out there lying on a beach somewhere and she was turning on the TV or going on the internet and looking at her phone and all these people were looking for her in Ohio and she's laughing at it and everything else, then I might feel differently. But for this, the truth is, this is what's supposed to be done in every missing persons case, except it doesn't get done most of the time. And so she was missing. There was reason to believe maybe something bad did happen to her. Of course, something we now know did not happen to her that was bad. At least for now, I don't know what kind of situation she's going to put herself in. I hope she lives a great life. I hope she attains all the goals that she wants to accomplish in this life. But who knows? But should she be responsible for all these people looking for her? And why didn't she just call the police right away and tell them where she was? Well, it's not illegal for people to run out of their lives. We keep going over this and over this and over this, that adults are allowed to leave their lives. Mothers, fathers, children, if they're 18 and over, they are allowed to do that. Now, what happens if some of these people are being abused and they leave and it's suspicious circumstances and they feel that they need to get away and not tell anybody because they were being abused, or they're afraid that somebody will be able to track them down and do even more harm to them? Then of course those people need to get away without telling anybody. That makes a lot of sense. And that's the rub in all of this, is that should we treat people differently regarding this? It's just tough to say. I think it's being overblown. I think that these people, I think it's just a lot of people just feel slighted. And I think it's their pride talking. I think it's their ego talking. Well, I was working really hard at this, and how dare she? Doesn't she respect my time? Doesn't respect I took off of work? Well, I just think it's that. And the truth is, and Heather's stating here, Heather guessed that one from the start. Cherie, who is once again the moderator here, she had it right from the start. She called it very early on that this young woman took off on her own by choice. That's true. Had to agree with her. So it's just tough for me to say. You can probably tell that it's a hard question for me to answer, because if I go totally one direction where I say, yes, she should be billed, she should and all of that, then I start thinking about the people who really do need to disappear because they're in danger. And by finding these people and billing them, will that even put them more in danger if the person who's trying to harm them can find out where they are? So I think of it that way. But on the other hand, if I just say, well, everybody's making too big of a deal about this and everything, then it makes it more likely that people are going to do this just for the fun of it. You just have to take it on a case-by-case basis. And on this particular one, it doesn't seem like that big of a deal to me. I don't think that she did it for fun. I don't think she did it to get on international TV and on the internet. I think she did it because she wanted to get the hell out. And she knew that if she were to tell her mother, whoever else, that she was going to do this, that she might not have been able to do it, even though that might be the best choice she's ever made. It's very difficult. Heather says they should make her do some community service with missing teens. Maybe, but then would have to know her location and where she was, and then wouldn't that just put her back in the same situation she was trying to get out of in Ohio? I'm not trying to argue. It's just a question. She's trying to get away from certain people, whether it's her mother, her family, her boyfriend, who knows. And by making her do all this community service, would those people then not try to hunt, quote unquote, hunt her down again? And then she'd have to go missing again. I don't know. Conscious says Maddie should pay there maybe consequences for her actions. There may be. And who knows? A year from now, maybe she'll be moving back in with her mother. We don't know. But first of all, she's however old, 18. She doesn't have the money to pay for that anyway. So if you want to bill her, I suppose you could. Make her pay $10 a month. I suppose you could do that if somebody wanted to do that. But once again, then that would be revealing where she was, and these people that she was trying to get away from would then know where she was and maybe try to work their way back into her life. Michelle, people really need to tell someone so no one is worrying, even leave a note as to not waste time. Abused, okay, tell the police. Cherie, law enforcement's job was to find her. They did that. We can't lose sight of the fact that she was found alive, and that is the hope with every disappearance, no matter the cost. And that's the other side of it. Everybody, all these people complaining on how they got their money wasted and time wasted. All the families that are unfound wish it were that simple. They wish that all they would have had to have done is pay a couple bucks and their daughter or son or wherever come back. So that's the other side of it as well, is do these people who are complaining about the money involved and the time involved, it somewhat does feel to me like they lack a little perspective. A little bit. Not a lot, but at least a little bit. So Heather says, I feel like the mom knew she ran away, or she wouldn't have called police so fast. If she knew she ran away, she should have to pay. Well, Heather, that's certainly it. If she knew that her daughter ran away and she never told police that, and then certainly she's at fault. Certainly. Astrid says there was a picture of a man that they were looking for. Did they say who were the... Not that I've seen. Person of interest or suspect? I don't know, Astrid. I just don't know. Well, he's certainly a person of interest. He just don't know who he is or how they met. Not that I've heard. Michelle says the police can go tell family they are okay without disclosing their location. That's certainly true, Michelle. But maybe Madison didn't want that. Well, now that they know, I guess maybe she did. I don't know. Or police just did good police work. We just don't know. Kathy, if you live in a healthy home, I can't ever imagine worrying my parents like that. No. Heather, I'm sure they could figure out a way without letting her location being released. Maybe. Just, I don't know if the person would want to take those chances. This is a case-by-case basis. If she was a battered wife or battered woman, battered girlfriend, then are we going to make them pay too when they leave and don't tell anybody and people go flying helicopters and dogs and everything else? Like I said, I think it's on a case-by-case basis. Cherie, I did call it on this one, but I'm losing on Suzanne Morphew. We're going to talk about her in a second, Cherie. So I'm now back to 50-50. 50-50 is pretty good in missing persons cases predictions, Cherie. Yes, it's just so case by case regarding billing and everything else. maybe some of you remember way, I don't know, 10 years ago, must have been longer than that. Remember that family? And they said that their little one was in that balloon and it was flying and there was a helicopter following it and everything. Total scam. Now, those people certainly should have been billed, and I think they were, for the fraud that they perpetrated regarding that, saying that their little kid was in this balloon and everybody was worrying about it. And then it turns out the kid never did get it in that balloon. Remember that? I forget where that was, but it was several years ago. This happened, had to have been when I was still lived in Las Vegas. Now, certainly those people should be billed because that was outright fraud. Those people knew exactly what was going on and allowed people to think differently. That was a big, Michelle, those people were billed. You are correct. I can't remember where either. Yeah. So that's a totally different situation. But I think we can all agree when you see something like that, it's like, yeah, those people should absolutely be billed and pay fines and penalties and everything else. Madison Bell's disappearance, a lot different than that, for sure. But I'm glad she's okay. Every family should be so fortunate to find out that their missing daughter just ran away and she's living somewhere else and she's fine and she has her freedom and everything. A lot of the mothers who've been on this program having missing daughters would love to have been in that situation. Let's talk about Suzanne Morphew, being that Cherie just brought her up. Lots of rumors going around. I know Cherie and I have talked about it. I've gotten several emails from one person in particular about how the husband was already in custody and they found her body and it was at this work site and everything else. All rumors, all lies. So what is going on? You know, as soon as I started hearing about where her husband was in custody, and I said, did they break his alibi? And I never did hear that. And because of that, I was a bit suspicious. That I just thought this just doesn't feel real. I heard that two of his buddies were also being charged, and none of it was true. And that's why I really like to allow things to play out for a day or days before I comment on something like that. Could it have been true? I suppose. I mean, there's a lot of husbands who have killed their wives and said that, yeah, they were in some other city when they really weren't, and they got their friends involved to dispose of the body. Yeah, that happens. But on the other hand, there was just something about it that just didn't seem right. You're hearing, oh, no, she really didn't go for a bike ride. And I don't think they're any closer to solving that disappearance case than they were a week ago, despite all of the rumors that were out there. Because like I said, there was somebody who kept emailing me, who's emailed me information before, and this person seemed to be believing what this person was sending to me, and I was reading it, and it just didn't end up being true. So I'm glad I didn't go public with it. Heather, there was just another one of those two. Dad called and reported daughter was abducted by a gold van. Turned out daughter went to her friend's house and dad didn't want her there. Yeah. I'm not sure about that one, Heather, but I think those types of situations are happening all the time. And the people that perpetrate those should absolutely be fined and billed and everything else. But Cherie says, not yet. I don't know what that is in reference to, Cherie, but something regarding Suzanne Morphew's case. But nobody's been charged. Her found. I think what we're finding out is that a lot of the facts that came out originally with this disappearance aren't true. And it's weird how that happens. Oh, she went biking. The neighbor saw her leave. And now we find out later, well, really nobody did see her go biking. And I don't know. You'd think that if the husband had anything to do with it, that they would have been able to, break his alibi from being 2.5 hours away in Denver. But it doesn't seem they've done that yet. Now, maybe he could have hired somebody to get rid of her. Certainly possible. Maybe he did get some of his fellow firefighter friends to do something to her. But still, that would seem to be something that would be easy to figure out over this amount of time, and the police haven't done so. So I'm just not sure what to think right at this point. Maybe Suzanne Morphew is another Samantha Bell. Maybe she just took off. Didn't want to be married anymore. Didn't want to be a mother anymore, and just took off. Don't know. Let's go to some questions that I got today. Cherie's saying, what I do know about the Suzanne's case is the home was held for 17 days. That's not collecting evidence. That indicates they are recreating crime scene. Okay. Heather says crime groups are big right now and people in the area all want to help. This is the case in both Suzanne and the Gannon stock case. People see a tent and automatically assume it's a body. Yeah. Good one, Heather. I was asked by, I was asked a question. Unfortunately, I did not write down the person's name. A percentage of men and women who go missing. And I did a quick count on Unfound. I went through all those numbers back for the Q&A episode in April. One number I did not include was how many women's disappearances we've covered and how many men's disappearances we've covered. Roughly, I did this in like a minute. We've covered 97 women's disappearances and 75 men's disappearances. Now, what's interesting about that, and maybe that those numbers are not a surprise to you. I think I kind of knew that we covered more women's disappearances than men's disappearances, although I think that's the first time in a while that I've counted that number. I know I've done it before, but maybe not within the last year. But the interesting part, because the perception is out there, is that women's disappearances get more attention than men's disappearances. And I think anecdotally, that's true. For example, Maura, Jennifer Kesse, Tara Grinstead, on and on. And these are Jody Huisentruit. Women's disappearances that are at least nationally known, if not internationally known. Madeleine McCann, little girl. Natalie Holloway, female teenager. So you can certainly make the argument that women's disappearances, news-wise, get more attention. Whereas when it comes to men, although I perceive Brian Schaefer's disappearance to be a well-known one, I don't know if it approaches the level of some of the women's that I've just mentioned. Certainly not Madeleine McCann, certainly not Natalie Holloway's. So there may be something to that women do get more media attention. And on here on Unfound, we try to treat everybody equal. It's certainly not the plan that there have been more women murdered than men. That's just the way things work out. And I would certainly like to be absolutely 50-50, but it's not. But as I continue to say, we don't pick the cases. The guests choose to be on the program. So if a bunch of family members who have missing male loved ones don't want to be on the program, I don't know what we can do about that. So there's that. But the interesting part is that I went on NamUs and I just did a search for women's. I marked the little advanced search button and said, just show me all the women and all the men. I did that today. On NamUs, there are 7,186 missing women on NamUs. Now, this is going to blow your mind if you've never looked this up. How many men are listed on NamUs? 11,184. Almost exactly 4,000 more. So 60% more men on NamUs than women. Now, why is that? Because I think the perception is that women and men go missing at about the equal rate. And in fact, maybe even more women go missing than men. Why? I think a lot of these are murders and a lot of women that they know. So the perception is that they're going to be more women than men. Also, because men are the one committing crimes and they can physically subdue women, it's going to be more likely that more women were going to disappear. But if you go by NamUs, and that's the federal database, and I realize that it's not even close to being complete, even the people who run it know that, 4,000 more men on there than women. Also shows that there are about 18,400 disappearances on there, which is not even close to how many missing persons cases are unsolved in the United States. At least that's the perception anyway. I think the reason is this. The reason there are more men on there. Men have more issues. Men have more of those issues that can be connected to mental health. Men have way more mental health issues than women do. I mean, despite what stereotypical men may say, women are crazy. It's really men that are crazy. Men have way more addictions than women do. It's not close. Men have more likely to commit suicide, although unfortunately over the last 50 years, women are slowly catching them in the suicide rate. So there are reasons that the men end up more on the missing persons lists. At least just the database. We're not talking about media. We're just talking about raw information. I think that's the reason that there are so many more men in there than women. I think that women being in abusive relationships certainly counts for something, but it seems that number is dwarfed by the amount of men who, once again, addictions, suicide, mental instability, and men just getting in fight with men over money, over drugs, over women. Men are more likely to commit crimes, which means they're more likely to get retaliated upon and then disappear. And I think it just adds up. Could I have ever predicted that it would add up to these numbers? No, I'm very surprised by that. And surely those numbers are going to be something that I'm going to be thinking about for a while. But those are the numbers. Given those numbers, it would seem that men should get a lot more attention for disappearances, but they don't. And I cannot argue with the idea that the reason that is because women's disappearances are easier to market when it comes to news shows, etc. Just the way our culture is. I think that if we were in a different type of culture, if we were in a culture where women are supposed to be subservient to men, maybe many Middle Eastern countries, different types of cultures, then women going missing probably don't get any attention at all. But in Western civilization, where women and men are seen as being equals, where they have all the same rights to free speech and religion and to work and have friends and drive cars and everything else, then women seem to perceptually get more attention than men do when they disappear, even though it seems way more when women or way more men go missing. That's the best I have right now. Let me see here. Colorado, Sheree says Colorado is the new Florida. Let's hope not, Sheree. A lot of you shocked by those numbers. Bigfoot says Brandy Wells went missing in 2006. Yep, we've covered that case. Know it well, Bigfoot. Michelle says, I can see that we have men who go missing because of hunting as well as crime. Are you saying, Michelle, that they get shot while they're out hunting, or they get lost, or they have heart attacks and are never found? Interested to hear more on that. Kiermoth, I personally think it's because of the demographic the true crime genre attacks as well. Well, that could be. I think that, like I said, I think there's a perception out there that women's disappearances are easier to market. They're easier to talk about. They're easier to theorize upon. I don't personally believe that. Heck, as far as Unfound goes, the most downloaded disappearance with just an individual, Flight 370, is still the most popular, at least on YouTube. But the most popular individual case of an individual going missing, what's it been? We know what it's been. Tom Brown, young man. Whereas I'm going to guess for many other podcasts out there that have covered disappearances, maybe they cover a lot of other different things, but they also do disappearances. I'm going to guess that maybe them talking about Maura Murray or one of these other young women who have gone missing, that's probably their most popular episode that they've done. I don't know. They're all mysterious. They're all mysterious to me. You know, I don't put them in a hierarchy. So I don't know. Kieran, the demographic I noticed skews more towards female viewers. So to me, it'd make some sense that female viewers would ask more about female cases. Kieran, it's certainly true. You can just see here in the chat room, you can tell how many of the people that are watching tonight are women, and that's great. And Unfound's demographic is 80% women, mainly between the ages of 30 and 55. That's just not for Unfound. That is for true crime genres in general. That's why the Oxygen Network and the Hallmark Channel have gotten into the true crime business. That's why. And you may be right that maybe some female viewers and listeners want to know about that, but I don't know. You know, what about the men listeners and male viewers out there? Do they care more about male disappearances? I don't know. Having been one at one time, I don't know. I think I was an equal opportunity lender. Didn't really matter. Heather says men are more likely to walk away from their family. That certainly can be figured into it, Heather. What are your analytics for your YouTube videos? Do they skew towards women, or I'm wrong? Oh, I don't think that the analytics for Unfound are much different than any other what you would call true crime program out there. Kiernoth, I'm sorry. Mostly women. The audience is mostly women, and it's not even close. There's a reason that some of these other podcasts, and I just know this, when they do advertisements for bras and things like that. That's because that's who's in the audience. Kierna says, makes sense to me. I don't mind. Viewers request what they want to see. Every case is interesting regardless. Michelle, it's a combination of all those. As well as one man I know was killed by a wild hog. Takes a little while to find them if they're away from their planned hunting area. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I guess that's something else. I don't know how much it figures into the percentages, but men are just more likely to do stupid stuff. You know, go surfing with sharks, go hunting out in the middle of the nowhere without phone or GPS or a compass or anything. We're just prone to doing a lot more stupid stuff. I don't know how that affects the percentages, but it probably affects them at least a little bit. More likely to go out and go ice fishing on ice, thin ice, and go through the ice and drown. Men are just more likely to do stupid stuff like that. So it all adds up. Once again, though, I didn't know it add up to be that big of a difference. And I don't think we can look at the NamUs database and saying, well, they're just concentrating on men's disappearances. I think that they're just typing in the information that they get from all these local precincts and state police around the country. That's all they're doing. So that's the number right now. And with a big difference like that, those numbers are not going to be the same anytime soon. Just not. All right, let's move on to another question that I got. And this is fairly interesting because I am from Pennsylvania. Diane had asked me about Ray Gricar. I think that's how you pronounce it. You know, I've read so much about his disappearance. I know I've watched the disappeared episode, but I think it's Gricar, right? Grica. But he was a lawyer who disappeared in the middle of Pennsylvania some years ago. I don't know what year it was, but it's been a while. And Diane asked me what I think happened in that case. Hello, Kiernoth. Oh, thank you for the super chat, Kiernoth. I deeply appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for making a contribution. Heather says there are more men in the oil fields, jobs like that more missing military men than women. Yes, all true. It all adds up. As far as Ray Gricar goes, a lot of conspiracies out there. People wanted to connect him to the Sandusky case with Penn State, that he ran off because he knew something, or he was made to shut up, or somebody got rid of him because he knew something and was going to, I don't know. What I look at, as I think you know by now, and the reason that we cover disappearances the way we do in Unfound, we really like to try to know the person. What was going on with that person at that time? What was their, once again, we talk about addictions, we talk about relationships, we talk about depression. All of those must be talked about to get to know a person and what was going on in their life. Did they lose their children in a custody battle? Did they get divorced? Were they having a beef with somebody? Those are all important points we have to take individually. I think what we also have to remember about Ray Gricar was that I believe he had a brother who committed suicide. And the way I remember it, once again, I'm not an expert on this case. Ray seemed to have some things going on himself. That's every time that I read something about his disappearance or have watched something, I often get the feeling that there's something going on with that guy. And I know that his computer was found and there was a hard drive missing and all of this. And of course, he's never been found. They did searches around the area where his car was found. And I know there was like something about, well, he would never, there was cigarette smoke or ashes in his car and he didn't smoke. I don't know what to make of all of that. Yeah, Heather, this is a case out of Pennsylvania, fairly well known in Pennsylvania. And I got to be honest with you. I think he took off, and I think they looked for him and just didn't find him. Very much like what happened recently with Eric Proct. Missing. Everybody thought there was foul play there, that his fiancee Preeti did something to him. And he ended up being found in an area that had been searched before. And somehow they missed him. And now it's been decided that he committed suicide. And it wasn't that far away from where he lived. Not even a mile away. And I have to believe in Ray Gricar's case that his body is still out there. And they just missed it the first time around when they looked. Or they didn't look in the right area. I think he did commit suicide. I think that when it comes to the computer, I think he got rid of the computer because he was a liar and didn't want stuff to be taken from it. Didn't want people nosing around because he did have sensitive material on there. That's my best guess. I know I've heard, well, he was seen with some other woman. This are all eyewitness accounts. And I think by now, if you've been following Unfound since day one, or have gone back and listened and gone back to day one and started listening, you know how much eyewitness accounts don't mean much. And having just talked about Julie Weflen's, Deborah Swanson's, and Kathryn Gregory's disappearances last Friday, specifically Julie's, with these eyewitnesses, frankly, they just don't sound that believable to me. And so that trend continues. So when people say they saw Ray with another woman and what was going on there, I just automatically dismiss it. I'm not saying it's not true. I just don't factor it into my analysis. Just sounds to me like Ray Gricar had a lot going on. And I think we've learned from disappearances of men that are eventually solved that are suicides is that it's very possible for these men to just take off out of nowhere, shoot themselves, jump off a bridge, overdose, and they get found. And there doesn't seem to be any reason or rhyme to it. Very common. What did I just say when we were talking about NamUs? Men are more likely to do this stuff. Women do it, not as much as men. So that's the way I think about Ray Gricar. It's not that interesting. I know a lot of people want to go into conspiracy theories, but you know me, I usually just look at things very simply. I'm not looking for the tricky explanation because when disappearances are solved, you find out usually they weren't that tricky at all. Andrea Bowman, her biological mother, Kathy, thought that Dennis Bowman killed her. She was right. Austin Pivo, killed by his boss and coworkers. Unusual. We don't know why it happened, at least right now, but I wouldn't say that that's that tricky. Zoe Campos, solved. Carlos Rodriguez, killed her. Tricky? No. Crystal Morrison, a little more complex. Certainly. I wouldn't necessarily call it tricky. What I would say, though, is we just didn't have enough facts to ever believe that she was still in that area and was going to be found and there was no foul play. I don't see any information in that case that we could have predicted that. Eric Procht, I just mentioned him. A lot of people believed because of the way his fiance acted, she was acting suspicious and she wanted to keep all his stuff and everything. They wanted to go in that direction. In the end, not tricky. Tragic and sad and horrible, but not tricky. So it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me to then think about Ray Gricar's and try to go in the tricky conspiracy direction. That's just the way I think about things. Can I spell the last name? Gricar. Yeah. Kathy says, I've always thought suicide for Ray. I think that's highly probable, Kathy. Astrid says, yep, that's why cameras are helpful. Yeah, and even when we have cameras, that doesn't tell you the whole story. Jennifer Kessy, have a camera. Just bad luck with that one. And it's really weird, though. We don't have a lot of, as many disappearances as we've covered, we haven't had a lot of situations where we've talked a lot about video and been able to play video either in the group or on the page or wherever else. Of course, Tom Brown's, but we don't have Tom Brown on video. We just have Hemphill County Sheriff's deputies on video. So we have a lot of cameras out there, but it's amazing how many times cameras are not helpful. Angela said, but he must have been trying to hide something. Very well could be, Angela. Maybe his own mental issues. I don't know. Why destroy the computer? Why run off and commit suicide? People do it. Doesn't make any sense. So I don't know if it's important to make sense of him destroying a computer or not. We don't know why a lot of these people. Why did Eric Proct go off and kill himself? I know he had a stressful job, but he was an EMT. Most EMTs do not commit suicide. He did. Why? I don't know. We never know. So I just don't know how we can get into explaining. I can tell you what I personally think, but I could be way off. And in the end, I'm not even sure that's important. Camera hasn't helped with Brandy's case yet. Yeah, there's another one. Have her on video, not helpful. I still think the guy in the white cowboy hat had something to do with her disappearance, but nobody knows who he is. I don't know. Let's move on to another question. This is from, and I thank you, Diane, for that question. And I don't mind theorizing on disappearances that Unfound is not covered. Thank you, Christine. Christine keeps racking them up. Those Canadian dollars. Christine, would you even happen to know what the exchange rate is for Canada? I was there back in September, and I can't remember what the exchange rate was when I was there. I don't even know. I just don't know. Carlene asked me about the Genetic Detective, which I have now learned is some TV show or something. She asked me if genetic detectives are ever going to be helpful in missing persons cases. I think the general, hello, little bit. There she is. Wonder where you were tonight, little bit. I knew I hadn't seen you. Probably not. We talk very, very little about genetics in disappearances, or very little about forensics in disappearances. We're going to get an opportunity next Friday for the disappearance that I've already done the interview. We're certainly going to talk about forensics next Friday, but we don't talk about blood and DNA and semen and all of that on Unfound, simply because those are usually not part of disappearance cases. So I don't know how genetic detectives could be helpful if we have no DNA or any genetics or anything else to offer. Now, on the other hand, could it be that somebody runs off, some young person like a Madison Bell, but we don't know what happened, and then somewhere down the road, she has children, and 30 years from now, those kids put their database in one of these private places like 23andMe or Ancestry.com or whatever, and their DNA matches up against the DNA that was put into NamUs when Madison, a theoretical Madison, disappeared. Sure. Then that would certainly be something. That I could see it working that way. Otherwise, I don't know how it would ever work, because we just don't have any forensics in any of these cases, or we just don't have them in most of the cases. It's one of the reasons that I think that missing persons cases are so difficult to solve. In fact, I was just talking with I was just talking to my dad about this, of all things, within the last week, that the problem we have with missing persons cases is that detectives these days are so hung up on fingerprints, DNA, semen, all of this stuff. If those things don't exist, they don't know what to do. I'm exaggerating, of course, but I think we all know how crazy law enforcement these days is about forensics. That's why you have CSI and the other 10 iterations of it on TV, or at least did. Whereas with missing persons cases, you have to have a lot more intuition. You have to really understand what was going on with the person, and you have to put the science to the side. That's how missing persons cases get solved. Because science isn't going to help you, because there's no science to investigate. So, Carlene, if you're in here tonight or going to listen to this, my general answer would be no. Genetic detectives will probably never play a large role in solving missing persons cases. Not because they don't want to. It's hard to imagine how that would happen. Some other things. Last week I talked about the Cameron Remmer lookalike. Still no resolution to that. The longer that goes on, the more I think that this either was a hoax or this guy is surely not Cameron Remmer. I mean, it's always weird to me, and it hasn't happened in a lot of Unfounds cases, but just cases that I've read about where a family believes, well, we believe he is a homeless person and we've been told that he hangs out under this one bridge and he's there all the time. They go there. The guy's not there. They keep going back. Never there, never. So it just happens to be that right around the time that they start looking for him is when this guy can't be found anymore. And I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that there's some hoaxing going on and a bunch of other things. To me, right now, this is how it feels with Cameron's case. This picture of this guy was taken, but what? They couldn't get him looking right at the camera. They got this guy like looking down like this. Kind of looks like Cameron, but it's not a very good picture. It's clear, but it's not a very good angle. Cameron's family was told, well, this guy's in this area all the time, and we're going to be able to hunt him down. We're going to be able to find him. That was 2 weeks ago. He's there all the time. Can't find him. It's a puzzler. It's a puzzler. But I cannot tell you how much that happens. The other disappearance that I think of is Claudia Wells with her daughter Robin, who was on the program early 2017. She's been looking for her mother for many years. She thought that there was a picture of her from being homeless in California. She went out there and people tell her, oh, yeah, she's around her all the time. Can't find her. Just right about the time people go looking for these people is when they just happen to disappear again, I guess. And because it happens so often, I'm inclined to believe that these are all nothing but hoaxes. I'm not saying there aren't missing people. There aren't homeless people who are missing people who end up getting hooked back up with their families. It happens. In fact, I just saw somebody post something like that in the Facebook group within the last 2 days. It happens. Still very rare. There are people out there who do that. But my idea is if this homeless person is not there when they go to find the person, then there's something going on. It just feels a little hoaxy to me. If anyone is following the case in Tulsa, Oklahoma, the 2 babies were found dead. I'm sorry to hear that a little bit. I'm not sure what case that is. Thank you, Christine. Yeah, heart's breaking. Yeah, very. Yeah. Astrid, homeless are very protective of each other, I have heard. That's what I've heard too, Astra. I'm not an expert in it. I'm surely not. Robin, Claudia Wells' daughter, surely knows more about it than I do. But I know a lot about disappearances now, and I just get really weirded out when people keep saying, well, I see this person who I think is missing, this John Smith guy who's missing all the time over here. You should go over there. You're going to find him. And then the family goes over there and hangs out for a week, a month, never sees him. What's going on? Oh. So it's a stumper. Let's move on to Instagram. On Instagram, I'll be speaking of which, thank you for reminding me, Cherie. Of course, last Friday's disappearances, I did do a YouTube video diagramming the 3 areas for Kathryn, Gregory, Deborah Swanson, and Julie Weflen. I'm going to do a video this week as well. I think it will be helpful. Probably won't be 20 minutes long like that one was, but I will be doing a video that I will post to this right here on the Unfound Podcast Channel. And of course, it will be available to everyone. I'll also post at least one picture on Instagram and in the group and on the page of a map that I think is very important to know for this Friday's disappearance, which I'm going to talk about here in a second. Before I get to that, though, it's a really good feeling. As I mentioned last Friday with John Polos, I've known him since early in 2017. It was really good to finally have him on the program, and we've already gone through why he finally was on the program, because Will Parks died. This Friday, we're going to have two women on the program. So I interviewed two sisters at the same time, and their other sister is missing. But I've known these women since 2017, and they're finally coming on the program, which makes me very, very happy. And that's going to be the situation next Friday, so June 5th. That's also a situation where very early on, sometime in 2017, I had talked to the guest once or twice, and then we just kind of fell out of touch with each other. And then just recently, I think she contacted me, and now she's already done her interviews. So last week, this week, next week, you're going to be hearing from people who I've known about or talked to. I talked to way back in 2017. Which is very unusual. Usually when you hear a guest on Unfound, usually we've only been communicating for a couple months. But for these people, these 3 weeks in a row, these will be people that I've known for like 3 years. So it's kind of unique, but that's why we don't forget these people that we talk to. I keep a list of everybody I've ever talked to. And once in a while I go back and see how they're doing. And hey, you ready? You ready to talk again? And that's what happened in John's case. And that's what happened on this Friday's situation as well. Just a couple more things, and then we'll get to this Friday's disappearance. I want to talk about just a couple disappearance, or one disappearance and one murder that one that I've never mentioned and one that I've talked about before. Occurred to me that this woman who went missing on Super Bowl Sunday, Abbie Flynn from, I know it looks like Gloucester, but it's like Gloucester, Massachusetts. I think that's how you say it. She went missing on Super Bowl Sunday back in February. She was having a party for friends, and it was at her house. And I think she told her son or somebody that, everything was ready and she was going to go out for a walk. And when her friends got there for the game, she wasn't there, and she's still missing all these months later. I just took a look. I looked at it for about a half hour today. I had other things to do, but as I was listening to something that I had to listen to for Unfound, I was also looking at her disappearance, and she doesn't exactly live in an area where you think it would be easy to go missing. She kind of lives on a peninsula. There does seem to be some woods. I wouldn't call them forest, but woods, some brush area around there. What concerns me most about her disappearance is that she did not live too far away from a fairly large body of water. Not long, not far at all. So that's one thing that concerns me. It also doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It seems that she lived in a very nice area. All these houses very near the water. We know that housing prices go up near the water. I certainly know about that, living where I do, but I rent. So it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense that she would be walking out there and somebody would drive by and attack her and pull her into her car. It doesn't seem like that type of area where that would happen, especially it would have been daylight when she was walking. She knows the area. I'm sure she knows her neighbors. And I know searches were done for her. Her husband was allegedly, seemingly in Texas, I think, when this happened. And she did say that she was going out. So it's not surprising that she would be out there somewhere. It wasn't like she said, oh yeah, I'm just going to stay here at home until my friends get there, and then they get there and she's not there. She said she was going out for a walk, and she was known as being an avid hiker. I'm going to tell you, I just happen to believe that she did go out walking somewhere, maybe did go for a walk up through some woods, that she knew where she was going, and she probably had something to happen to her. Maybe she fell and hit her head, or she had a heart attack. She was, I think, in her 50s, although that would be rare, but it's not unheard of. I got to believe that she's out there somewhere, and they just like Eric Proct, just when they looked for her, they just happened to miss her for whatever reason. That is my best theory. But like I said, with the water there, I'm hoping that she wasn't suicidal or something. I'm hoping. I mean, preparing this party and then, but I don't know. Maybe she had some sort of mental episode. Maybe she had a panic attack. A lot of different possibilities. But my phone ringing. Being that she was an avid hiker and there wasn't a lot of places she could go, I just got to believe something happened to her health-wise, and she just hasn't been found. Abbie Flynn is the woman's name. Christine says, looking forward to the June 5th episode. Well, don't forget about this Friday, Christine. LaFord says, I was going to ask you about, you were going to ask me about Abbie Flynn, LaFord? Well, then that's fitting. The Super Bowl lady. That's exactly right. Abbie Flynn from Gloucester. It looks like Gloucester. It's Gloucester, but it's Gloucester, the way I understand it. So that's my opinion on that. The other one I want to talk about is the still unsolved murder from Texas, and it's over 4 years old now. And that's why I'm talking about it. We just passed the 4th anniversary of this murder, and that's of Missy Bevers. If there was ever, I've been totally wrong on this one. If there was ever a murder that you thought would have been solved within like 48 hours, it's hers. We have video, talking about video earlier, and sometimes video helps. Sometimes it doesn't help at all. But you had this person in SWAT gear going through this church, all on video. And Missy was going to be conducting, I think, a yoga class at this church, something like that. And she was the leader of this class, so she would get there early to set everything up. And this person, some people believe it's a man, other people believe it's a woman dressed up in SWAT gear, is going through there. It looks like a burglary, broke through a window, trying to open some doors. The church, fairly large church, had cameras inside. I think there were motion detector cameras, I think. But Missy goes in there. This person's already in there. And this person attacks Missy and kills her. I don't think with a gun, but I think it was with a hammer or something like that. Still unsolved over 4 years later. I got to admit, I'm shocked. I'm really, really shocked. I've wavered back and forth on this. I haven't been able to really investigate it, or because that's not what I do for this. I don't do murders, but I do think about it. And I've wavered back and forth between, of course, this happened before Unfound even got started. That was this person after Missy specifically and was just waiting for her, making it look like a burglary when really it was a planned murder, just waiting for her to show up. Or was this a burglary and Missy just happened to get there at the wrong time? Wrong place, wrong time. I have to tell you right now, I think Missy was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Why? Because you don't run into, at least my perception, is that you don't run into too many crimes where somebody was trying to make it look like one thing when it really was something else. Where somebody, for example, like they do on many crime shows like Law and Order, where it's a murder, but it's made to look like a burglary. The real focus was to kill the man and woman in their bed and then take stuff to make it look like it was a burglary and then the man and the woman got in the way of it and they got killed. That is very rare. Very, very rare. That is the stuff of movies and Hallmark Channel TV movies and Law and Order episodes. Most murders are just murders. People go in and kill people. And I'm not saying that murders and killings don't happen during burglaries, but it's not one thing trying to made to be look like something else. Maybe you think of the movie like, what is it? Jack Reacher, or if you want to one shot the book that the movie was made off with Tom Cruise, where that guy shoots a bunch of people with a sniper rifle, but really he only wanted to kill one of them. He killed all 5 of them to cover up the fact that he only wanted to kill one of them. He only meant to kill one of them. And that's just not real life. So, that's that. And then Shree's even saying, I do not think it was wrong place, wrong time. Okay. But I just can't see a situation where somebody said, okay, I'm going to break into this church and I'm going to wait around and Missy's going to come in and I'm going to attack her. Because the way I think about it, so many things can go wrong. What happens if you break in and you're seen by somebody? What if you break in and you don't realize there's an alarm system there? What if you break in and you hurt yourself? What if you break in and you do this? What if you break in and do that? Whereas either way, people are going to be looking for you. In the end, it doesn't matter if it was a break-in or not. They're still going to try to figure out who killed Missy. And the first people law enforcement is going to look at is anybody who had a beef with her, whether they think it was a burglary or not. So it doesn't matter if whatever somebody tries to make something look like. In the end, the law enforcement is going to investigate it only one way, and they're going to first look at people who had a beef with Missy or anybody else, any type of case. And being that this is over 4 years later and nobody's been charged, leads me to believe it probably wasn't somebody who had a beef with Missy. Maybe it was just a random thing. Maybe this person hated the church. Maybe this person was some sort of meth head going in there, looking to see if there was any money around and felt that, okay, this woman's here. She's going to see me and I need to kill her. So that is my reasoning on it. But I still say nobody is more shocked than I am that it's unsolved over 4 years later, given the video, given how they've been able to map it all out. They know how long Missy had been holding these classes there, what time she got there, and everything else. So, not to mention, I think it would be easy to track down SWAT equipment. Stuff that looks like SWAT equipment and who sells it. And they would be able to look at it and say, okay, this is sold over here. And that they haven't been able to do that, I really don't know what it means. But it's a case that is always kind of there in the back of my head. Astrid says, is it correct that 10% of killings are stranger related? Astrid, I think the percentage is higher than that, but it's certainly not 50%. It may be 25%, but probably not more than that. All right, let's move to this Friday's. Let's see if I'm going to be able to do this. Come on now. This Friday, we are covering the disappearance of Shelva Rafte. She disappeared from Pittston, Pennsylvania on May 29th, 2006. And what that means is when the episode comes out here in 2 days, it will also be May 29th. So we will be doing this episode on the 14th anniversary of her disappearance. And I have to believe that her sisters, who are my guests this week, wanted it that way. I think that's why we finally ended up talking again after 3 years. They wanted to wait for an anniversary to come around. But the two guests will be her older sisters, Joanne Decker and Shirley Masters, who live in Pennsylvania. And this will be the first time I've had two guests on at one time since the Jamie Bowen case disappearance. When I did that interview with her mother and a woman who continues to help her with Jamie's disappearance back like 2 years ago. So this will be the first time since then that I've interviewed two people at one time, and audio came out, I think, really good. They were both there together doing it and using a speakerphone, so they were pretty loud, and it came out pretty good. The episode's title is No Good Together. You should know that this is another one of those situations where a guy says, yeah, I got into a fight with her and I just don't know what happened. I cannot stress enough to all of you how common this kind of disappearance is. Christy Nichols, about 6 weeks ago, when we covered her disappearance, that's what her man said. Danielle Sleeper, just 2 weeks ago, her husband says, yeah, we got into a fight and then she just took off. This is kind of the situation with Shelva's disappearance, but the circumstances are a little bit murkier. Because although it plays out kind of like Danielle Sleeper's, in which they were at a party, got in a fight, and she and her on-again, off-again boyfriend, John, left. And what he claims happened is they went back to his place, continued fighting, and she took off walking back to her apartment, which was like a mile and a half away. And a lot of people are going to say, well, yeah, I don't believe that at all. And that makes a lot of sense. The issue, though, is that in comparison to Christy and to Danielle and some of these other women who have disappeared under similar circumstances, Rosemary Rapp is another one, Shelva did have a lot of things going on personally. She was having work problems. She was having money problems. You will hear how she kind of tried to commit suicide a couple years before that. It might have just been a cry for help, but that certainly can kind of make you think that maybe she really did leave on foot and something happened. But you're also going to hear about how one of the main reasons you may not think that her boyfriend did something to her, i.e. they went back to his place, got in a fight, he killed her, maybe by accident, is because when they finally did notice that Shelva was missing, they went to her apartment, and when they went in, the TV was on. And that was just one reason to believe that maybe she did get back to her apartment that night. So it'll be up for you to decide. It's a long interview, mainly because I had two people talking instead of one. So we had her sisters, both of the sisters, offering their points of view on what was going on in Shelva's life. And you're also going to hear, and I have to admit that I'm not done editing the entire interview yet, but there is a part of it that is somewhat, how do I want to put this? Touchy. So I haven't figured out how much of it I'm going to allow to play. I would just say that Shelva was telling a lot of people, both her sisters and friends, about something about John that very salacious, and he's been never charged with anything or anything like that. But so I haven't figured out what I'm going to do with that yet. We talked about it, but I'm going to have to listen to it again to figure out how much can be played. I'm not trying to withhold anything from you, but I have to look at it from a standpoint of, am I defaming this guy by it playing the way it is the problem. But she was out there saying it. I have proof of it. I have an email where a friend of hers had emailed sisters about what Shelva was saying about John. So you'll just have to judge that for yourself. She is in Namus Astra. She is also on the Charlie Project. I also posted at least one article in the the discussion group and on the Facebook page when like 5 years after she disappeared, but there were articles done at the time of her disappearance. Once again, Shelva, very unique name, Shelva Rafte, Rafte. So Carlene says, I love my TV on for my pets whenever I leave the house. I do not believe that Shelva had any pets. At least that didn't come up. But it's at least something to think about. Maybe you should ask your assistants. Yes, he knows what happened. Vegas girl still good. Maybe you should ask your assistants. Yeah. 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 I suppose I should ask my assistants a lot of things. But that's the disappearance for this Friday. Shelva Rafte. She disappeared on May 29th, 2006, the early morning hours of May 29th, 2006. Pittston, Pennsylvania. We're going back to my home state of Pennsylvania, but Eastern Pennsylvania. The episode is called No Good Together because she and her boyfriend, John, seem to be toxic for each other, but you will find there's another reason that I titled it that. The guests are her sisters, Joanne Decker and Shirley Masters. And like I said, I will have an accompanying video to show you where, if we are to believe Shelva did walk away from John's house, I will show you the route that she would have taken. And that itself probably can generate some questions there. So that's all I got tonight. Wow. Another long live show, almost 2 hours, and I just love it. So I talked about the bike that I got, talked about the mosquitoes that I'm going to have to go back in there and fight them a little bit probably. Talked about the poll, Madison Bell, Suzanne Morphew, Cameron Remmer lookalike, Unfound on the ground. Of course, patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. If you'd like to check that out, become a premium Patreon member. Talked about how some of these recent cases that you're going to be hearing about episodes are going to have people who I've been talking to for quite a long time. Talked about Abbie Flynn, who disappeared on Super Bowl Sunday. Talked about Missy Bevers. Took some great questions. And talked about this Friday, the preview of the disappearance of Shelva Rafte. Thank you all. Don't forget, like Michelle says, do not forget to give this video a thumbs up or a like before you go. Subscribe to this channel so you'll know when new videos are posted. You won't have to keep searching. It'll just ring you when we post new videos. Makes it nice and easy. And that's all I got. Good night, everyone. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for the super chat contributions. I cannot thank you enough. And I'm out of here. Here I come, mosquitoes.